amount of money I have, I want you to use open source. So constraints are, you look at the platform he's using and you tell him this platform is not able to do A, B, C, D. So, and the platform could be in terms of the operating system, it could be in terms of database, the database management system that is insisting on using. So you need to put that so that it ensures you, so that when you give him the system and there were certain things he was expecting and he's not seeing, you go back to the constraint and tell him, but look, when we started the project, I told you this thing cannot happen. Now, to give a more simple example is, let's say you are constructing a bridge and you tell the customer, you are a civil engineer, you tell the customer, I want us to start this project between September and December, because that is the dry season. But he insists, and you tell him between September and December, we'll finish this bridge in 3 months. Then he insists, no, people are suffering. I want this bridge to start in June. So you start this project in June, then it starts raining. So when it starts raining, when the rain is heavy, you stop work. So instead of delivering that project in 3 months, which the customer was saying, you deliver it in 4 months. So a constraint in that case, you will say this project is subject to being finished in 3 months if there is no rain. So he'll not sue you, because if you had not put there and remember, this constraint is put in this document, which is the project charter, which is a legal document. So it's there and he signed it. So he'll not take you to court. But if you don't put there the constraint, he's going to take you to court. Then number 6, you must put there assumptions. Assumptions are things like suppliers will supply things on a time. Assumptions is nobody will fall ill. And things like that. So you tell him, we are assuming that these things are going to work in an ideal way. So that project charter will have those things where you shall describe, you shall give the acceptance criteria, you shall give the deliverables, the exclusions, the constraints, and the assumptions. So a bit more, but I'm not going to stress here. You must explicitly put there the scope and the work breakdown structure. In the next 3 or 4 lectures ahead, we shall be looking at this. So this must also appear in the project charter. Then schedule and time management. Again, this is a knowledge area. You can see schedule and time. So managing time or schedule is about defining, sequencing, resourcing, putting resources and the duration, resource and duration estimation, schedule development, and schedule control. Now we look at formal techniques of how to come up with a schedule and the time management. Now, the schedule and time management is based on the work breakdown structure. Now, in work breakdown structure, you have all the tasks that are required in the project. You put them down in a diagram, and we shall see how we put down that diagram. So in the work breakdown structure, the resources required are identified, the the time durations are estimated, the dependencies are identified. Now, dependencies are, we know that certain tasks can only occur after certain tasks. Now, for example, in you can only start designing you have gathered requirements. You cannot design the system before you gather the requirements. So requirements are dependent on, or rather, the designs are dependent on the requirements. The coding is dependent on the design, and so on. So you will put these things as in the work breakdown structure, which is a diagram. Now, from that diagram, you will create a schedule. And the schedule will show all the dependencies and so on. But the schedule may not include the resources. It could be in the form of text. Now, again, we'll see how to develop a schedule. Then, yeah, you see the schedule and the Gantt chart capture the project from beginning to the end. Now, after you have done that, and usually it's preferred that you have it on one sheet of paper so that you have what is called a bird's eye view of the project. Now, once you have done that, you are going to do costing or project cost, and this is as described here. So, what is going to happen? You have your work breakdown structure, you have your schedule and Gantt chart, so you know what tasks will make up this project. Now, once you have that bird's eye view, it's possible to estimate cost for each task, and in the long run, to come and put all the costs for all the tasks together and say what the project will cost. So managing costs is about resource planning. What do you need? How many people do you need in this project? What supplies do you need, and so on. So you do resource planning, you'll do cost estimating, you'll do budgeting, and you'll control. So develop a budget, and we have several methods which can be used to estimate. Now we shall see that. That will be a separate topic. Now plan for the cash flow, track the expenditures, explain deviations, and make adjustments where necessary. Now this last one comes in when the project is underway. Remember, during the planning, you have not started the project, but you need to tell your client or your customer or top management that based on these requirements, this is how much this project will cost. Now, the client can then go and go to the bank and get a loan. The top management can source for funds or request for funds from the government, and so on. So your project has to lie within that budget. Then there is what is called project quality. Now, I mentioned earlier that quality is not a phase in project management. And you noticed when we were looking at the project life cycle, there was nowhere that quality appears. Now, the reason is quality is built into a project. There has to be quality everywhere. From the time you start collecting requirements to designing and so on, you must put in quality. Now, quality involves standards. You must have a way of measuring so that you can say this is of high quality this has not met. So you to do quality, when we do quality, you have to do quality planning. Now, where you have to say, these are the standards we are going to use. You have to do quality assurance. How do you ensure that the customer is satisfied? You must do what is called quality control. Supposing you finish a phase and the client rejects that phase, what are you going to do so that the project remains on course? So you must control that. And quality control now depends on feedback from the customer. So the quality plan, which comes under here, defines the quality standards. Software has certain standards, but I need to mention here that setting standards for software has been very difficult. When I first of all changed to ICT, that was in the 90s. There was a lot of hype about software quality. These days, nobody seems to talk about it. And I think it's because it's very difficult to measure software quality. I remember even when I was doing my master's, our lecturer, we used to have a course called software quality, software metrics. Our lecturer never taught us. He just gave us topics to go and read. And the reason he said, yes, this software quality looks like, it looks like, I mean, people are talking about software quality. And when we talk about software quality, we are talking about measures. And yet nobody has agreed about what software quality is. So there was no structure. He just told us, he gave us topics, and he said 2 people work on a topic and make presentation, and that was the end of the course. So quality for software, and I'm saying this because you are in the ICT. Quality in software is very abstract and very hazy. You may find somebody saying that this software is of very high quality, and somebody else says this software is not, this software is poor quality. Now, think about it this way. A user decides, I want a beautiful user interface. Now you ask him, what do you exactly mean by beautiful? Because beautiful is relative. Kids like things which are colorful, so you'll put their bright colors. But when people get old, they don't like these flashy colors. They want something which they say is appealing to the eye, but the brightness of color is not really appealing to the eye. So, like I've just said, defining beautiful is very difficult. Now, assuming, okay, it's a kid, you do that, you come up with a screen that has those flashy colors. Now, remember, those flashy colors need they need more processing power. They need more storage. So you will create a system that has these flashy colors, but its response time is compromised because of the higher processing power and because of the memory it requires. So the small kid is going to be impressed by that user interface. Now you meet somebody who is tech savvy, somebody who knows about computing. He says, excuse me, but what is this? This system of yours is using too much process power, is using too much memory. What kind of system is this? So this is what I'm telling you, that quality is difficult, especially in ICT. So, and standards vary from user to user. So the quality plan, you must have the quality standards, you must be, and this is why when you go to the field, you need to know what the policy of the person who is employing you, what policy they have. So the quality plan defines the methods that will be used to achieve the standards and the methods that will be used to measure the standards. So the beginning point is to define which standards you shall be using. Then human resources. We are now at 6. Human resources, managing human resources is about human resources planning. How many people do you need? Who is going to do what? Then hiring or contracting, and then developing and managing a project team. So you need to identify the human resource requirements. In other words, what expertise do you need? You need to select the project team. You need to develop the project team. Then you need to motivate and manage that project team. That is another area in the project management body of knowledge. Then communication. Remember, a project involves many people. It involves you talking to top management. It involves you to the top. It involves communication between top management and the sponsor, the client, the users, and so on. So you must plan for this. So managing communication is about communications planning, information distribution. So you plan how you are going to communicate. How many weeks will we? How many times will we be meeting in a week in this project? Is it weekly? Is it daily? Is it monthly? And who is going to meet? Then it involves information distribution. You must know what information is going to who. It involves performance reporting. People are doing different tasks. Are they doing these tasks properly? And so on. And then it involves stakeholder management. We have our next topic will be on stakeholder management. So communication includes within the team and with others outside the team. This communication needs what is called a communication plan, which specifies who needs to be communicated with, what methods will be used, what frequency, and who within the project will be responsible. Then you need to plan for risk. Now, risk represents the likelihood of occurrence of an event that will negatively or positively impact the achievement of the project goals. So managing risk is about risk planning and identification. I think it should be the other way. Risk identification and planning. Risk analysis, which has to be qualitative or quantitative. Most of the time, risk analysis is qualitative. In other words, you cannot put a numerical value to it. Quantitative, you can put a value to it, like if this happens, I'm going to lose this. I'm going to delay the project by this many weeks. I will be forced to incur this expense. Then you must do what is called risk response planning, because and again we shall have we shall have a session on this. You need to to list the risks. You need to prioritize those risks. So you will need to know, after you have identified them, what you should do should in the event that that happens. You know, the thing about risk is you don't know whether it will happen, but you need to anticipate what is likely to go wrong. Then you need to do risk monitoring and control. So the processes that come under risk include identifying the risk, analyzing risks, managing the risks. Then you need, under the PMBOK, there's also a body of knowledge known as procurement. So managing procurement, in other words, there are things which are needed for the project. How do you get them? What are they? How are they costing? Are you going to advertise for tenders? Are you going to single source, or are you going to outsource, or what are you going to do? So you need to do acquisition and contracting plans. You need to look at sellers' responses, selections and responses, how to administer the contract, and how to close the contract. Procurement is very sensitive. Like you can see these days when you read the dailies, a lot of people are being taken to court for things that they did. Because some people are overpriced. Some people are being taken because they went and sourced goods without getting the necessary approval and so on. So in procurement, you must have a contract with the people you are dealing with. So it's contracting to obtain some supplies or services required to carry out a project. Supplies are tangible products. Services could involve the skills required from people. Procurement may be extremely complex. In a lot of projects, people end up in court because of not doing proper procurement. You may have read in newspapers, people's property is being sold 10 years after they did a project. So that's why we say it can be extremely complex. So time schedules should be critical, because if you are not careful, and suppliers are very notorious, you go and agree with him that next week on Monday, I want you to supply me this product. He agrees, I will supply this product. Now, tomorrow, somebody else goes and tells him, I want this product on Monday. Now, your product is costing 50,000. This person who comes tomorrow, his product is costing 1,000,000 shillings. What is the supplier going to do? The supplier is going to skip you and is going to supply the goods worth 1,000,000 shillings and leave your goods worth 50,000. And some of these suppliers, unfortunately, they'll ask for a deposit. Now, remember, if you put there a deposit and he has gotten somebody who is paying him more, he's going to skip you because you have already committed yourself. And most of the time, they don't want to refund you your money. So, and that's why I keep going. I am going back to saying that procurement is a very complex thing. So time schedules can be crucial. On complex projects, almost always involve additional experts such as lawyers. So if your project is complex, bring in a lawyer, because a lawyer is going to draw up a legal document which both parties know they have to subscribe to. They know they'll end up in court if they don't follow what the lawyer has written. And the lawyer is going to cover everything in law. Then stakeholder management. Again, like I said, some people want to put it under a body of knowledge. Some people put it outside the body of knowledge. So in stakeholder management, we first of all need to identify who stakeholders are. And this is going to be our next topic. Now, stakeholders are people or organizations who either will be impacted by the project or who can impact the project. Stakeholder, in stakeholder, we have the key stakeholders. Now, the key stakeholders include the project sponsor and the project team. But there are other people who are tied to the project, but they are not directly involved in the product development. These ones may be directly involved in product development, but there are other people who are not directly involved. This include customers, suppliers, vendors, the public, landowners, voters, other departments within the organization, the government, etc. The major tool, and we shall be looking at this, is what is called the stakeholder register. Now, the stakeholder register lists the stakeholders, their roles, their communication, and the stakeholder register is not a static document. It keeps changing because as the project proceeds, you may realize that you'll need to include other or co-opt other people into the project. Then new stakeholders can appear at anything related to what I'm saying, that the stakeholder register has to be regularly updated because a new stakeholder may come. Like I was telling you last time, you know, most of us develop information systems, but somebody tells you to develop an AI system, and you've never done that, and probably you've not learned anything in AI. Now, it may need you to bring in somebody who has some idea about algorithms in AI. So managing stakeholders is about identifying stakeholders, their interest level, and their potential influence to the project. And it's about managing and controlling the relationships and the communications between stakeholders and the project. So we have looked at this. We have looked at project management body of knowledge. So these are the knowledge areas. So as a project manager, these are the areas that you should look at so that you end up with a product which your client will like. Now, if you look, if you look at it, it covers everything in project management. You cannot you cannot skip any of it. You cannot skip costing the project. You cannot skip building quality into the project, and so on. So it's called a knowledge area because it is theoretical. Theoretically, a project has to have all these aspects. Now, how are they practically implemented? Those are the knowledge areas. In other words, you need to know about them, but you also need to implement them. How do you implement them? You implement them through because you are ending up with a product, but this product will have to go in various phases. So the Project Management Institute suggests, you know, this is a project which is starting. Now, you are going to form a project team. You are going to hire people. Now, when you hire people, you need to appreciate that a project goes through 5 phases. So the PMI suggests that within that project team, you select people who will do project initiating. You form a group that will do project initiating. You form another group that will do project planning. Another to do execution, another one to do monitoring and controlling, and another one to do closing. Now, these are known as the project management body of knowledge process groups. So, what what we were looking at, we've just looked at the knowledge areas. Now, those knowledge areas are going to be practically implemented by the groups, by these process groups. So we look at these process groups in detail. So we have the initiating group, where it defines a new piece of work. Remember, initiation begins is at the beginning. Now, this piece of work could either be a complete project or a phase in the project. So it ensures that one has authority to proceed. So that initiating group is the one which will finally say the project can now start. Then you can have another group that is going to do planning. Now, the planning group defines the objectives and the scope of work to be done. It encompasses all the work around planning and scheduling tasks. It can cover a complete project or just the phase one is working on right now. Or one might be closing one phase and planning the next phase in parallel. So you could be in one phase, but you are planning for the next phase. Now, this leads me to what I keep noticing. When you tell, okay, we shall be doing Gantt charts, you tell a students to draw a Gantt chart, and they treat it as an academic exercise, where they never put their parallel tasks. In other words, if you look at the Gantt chart looks like a staircase. Projects can never happen like that. There must be overlapping tasks. Then we'll have an executing process group, which carries out one carries out the project tasks, or rather, in this group is going to do the project tasks. This is the delivery part of the project management, where the main activity happens and one creates the products. Now, this is where you are actually doing the product. Then we have the monitoring and controlling process group. This processes let one to track the work that is being done, to review and report about it. They also cover what happens when one finds that the project isn't following the agreed plan. So this is monitoring and controlling. You are looking at your product, and you are trying to determine whether it's on track, it's off track, and so on, and you are taking corrective action. So these processes, or these process groups, or the processes for this process group, run alongside those in the executing group, mainly, but alongside other groups too, so that the project is monitored as it progresses. Now, if you remember, when I was showing you the project life cycle, I said there's an iteration between the executing and then the between the executing and the planning, or rather the monitoring and the control is in between between planning and executing. So it could be cyclic, where you keep going, you are doing something, then you find that it's not going according to plan, so you'll have to go back to the plan and replan. Then the closing. These processes let one finalize all the tasks in the other groups when one gets to the point of closing the project or phase. So we now, because we've talked about process groups, so what happens in these groups? So initiating process group, the project is initiated. You want to give the go-ahead for the project to go. Now, after initiating, you will need to plan. Now, there are various things that you are going to plan. You are going to do scope planning. You are going to define the scope. You are going to define the activities. You are going to do resource planning and so on. Now, all according to the Project Management Institute, total to 21. Then after you have planned, you are going to execute. You are actually doing the project. So you will do quality team development, information system, and so on. Then controlling, of course, you'll have to keep shifting and execution. Monitoring most of the time happens between planning and execution. You made a plan. Is the project going according to the plan? And if it's not going according to the plan, what measures are we taking to ensure that the project is back on course? Then we have what is called the closing process. Now, the closing process, you go back to the contract, and remember, in the contract, we said that there are certain things, you list things that I talked about the acceptance criteria. The acceptance criteria is in the contract. So you go to the acceptance criteria and you start ticking off whether all those things whether all those things were done. Then you do administrative closure. You officially close the project and hand it over to your client. So there is this diagram was suggested by the project management body of knowledge, which is saying that these 5 phases are implemented through this process, this body of knowledge. And within this body of knowledge, we have all these things. And I think they are 32 things within this. Now, this table was suggested by the Project Management Body of Knowledge, version 6. Now, what they said is that we have knowledge areas. These are the things, theoretically, which should be done in a project. And then they suggested that you come up with a project team, and within that project team, you create groups. So we have the initiating process group, the planning process group, the executing process group, the monitoring and controlling process group, and the closing process group. Now, remember, in project integration, integration is bringing things together. So in integration, these groups are brought together. So during the integration, you will involve all the groups during the integration process. So during the integration, project integration management, the initiating group will develop the project charter during the integration. Then the planning process group will develop the project management plan. The executing group, the executing process group will direct and manage project work and manage project knowledge. The monitoring and controlling process group will monitor and control project work and perform integrated change control. And the closing process group will close the project. Now, this is at project, and remember, project integration management is at the beginning of the project. So at the beginning, all these groups have to be together. they have to come up together and discuss these knowledge areas. And these are the things that these groups will do. So I'll only talk about the integration, because the integration is bringing all the groups together. Now, the other notable thing about this mapping, in other words, the process groups and knowledge areas mapping, is that there are certain knowledge areas where these groups will not be involved. Other groups will not be involved. Like in project scope management, in this knowledge area, the only groups that will be involved that are needed are the planning process group and the monitoring and controlling process group. So the planning process group will plan scope management, the critical requirements, they will define scope, they'll create the work breakdown structure. The monitoring and process group will validate the scope and control the scope. And in the project schedule management, because this knowledge area is only dealing with managing the schedule, we shall only have the planning process group, where they will plan the schedule management, they'll define activities, they'll sequence activities, they'll estimate activity durations, and then they'll develop the schedule. And so this goes on until we reach the project stakeholder management. So, like we said, this is a framework. Now, this framework was brought about by the Project Management Institute to direct you. So, why is it called a framework? It's called a framework because projects are different. Software projects differ from construction projects. They differ from financial projects that deal with delivering a system for financial institutions, and so on. But now, what you need to do as a project manager is to customize this. Use this as a template, but customize it to your project. Now, this I pulled it out of the out of the PMBOK version 6. But what you can do is you can just expand it. But basically, it's just a repeat of what I've been talking about here. It's just a repeat of this. So I think I want to stop there because, like I told you, I have to attend another meeting at 10. Any questions? Okay, please remember to sign the register. It's already 10:07.